Welcome to the Susan LoPresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul, the podcast designed for women in midlife and beyond who are ready to reclaim their health, restore their energy, and create a vibrant life that they love. I'm Susan LoPresti, certified health coach, Reiki master, wellness advocate, and fellow traveler on the journey of healing and transformation. After overcoming my own health challenges and discovering the powerful connection between mind, body, and spirit, I made it my mission to help other women thrive, not just survive, as they age. Each week, you'll discover expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tools to support your health, longevity, emotional well being, and spiritual growth. We'll explore topics like nutrition, functional medicine, fitness, hormone health, stress reduction, energy healing, meditation, and the habits that help us live long, healthier, and more joyful lives. Whether you're looking to boost your vitality, navigate life's transitions, or deepen your connection with yourself, you're in the right place. So grab your favorite cup of tea, take a deep breath, and join me as we nurture your mind, your body, and nourish your soul. Let's begin. Today, I am delighted to welcome a very special guest, Marisa Handler, a Fulbright Fellow, Iowa Writers Workshop alum, teacher, coach, and the author of the forthcoming book, Sanctuary, a powerful exploration of how we find and create inner refuge during life's most challenging moments. In a world that often feels overwhelming and uncertain, Marisa brings a unique blend of poetic insight, spiritual wisdom, and practical tools to help us navigate change, reconnect with our creative voice, and cultivate resilience from the inside out. During our conversation, we'll explore topics such as finding sanctuary in the midst of life's storms, embracing creativity as a birthright, transforming obstacles into opportunities for growth, and discovering how even times of crisis can become powerful messages of personal and spiritual transformation. Whether you've been feeling overwhelmed by world events, disconnected from your creativity, or simply seeking a deeper sense of peace and purpose, this conversation is filled with inspiration and wisdom you won't want to miss. Marisa, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. I've been looking forward to this conversation with you.
Thank you, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. I have so many questions, but I'd like to start by you sharing a bit of your personal journey and what led you to explore the concept of sanctuary.
Until I was a month shy of 12, I lived in South Africa, in apartheid South Africa, before my family left. We left at the end of 88, and at the time we left, it looked like nothing would change, and the country was heading towards civil war. So I grew up in a culture that was heavily segregated and just about every level wrong, deeply wrong. And we left, and then we entered as immigrants here to the US, to Southern California. And while in the political sense, it was an incredible shift to finally be in a culture and a country that had equality, it also was a huge rupture in our lives to leave everything we knew behind. And I think that began for me, the impact of that on the family system. It began the journey that in some ways my life has been the response to, of where is home? Where does home live? And it's taken me many different places, both actually geographically as well as internally,
Yeah.
but led me to a place of very deep understanding that ultimately home is interior. Home is really when we can fully land in ourselves and our full authentic selves and be that in the world. Now that's a short version of quite a lengthy journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was I was on one trajectory, and then at 33 on a Fulbright in India, I had a full-on breakdown, which shifted my life in another direction. So I feel like I've gone both outwards and inwards on my journey, and ultimately come into what does feel like genuine sanctuary in myself, and work with women really to foster and fully land in that in themselves. Many of the women I work with have been on a lifelong search, sometimes unconscious, for that place in themselves by the time they find me. Yeah.
What's the average age of the women that you work with, do you find?
I've worked with everywhere, I would say, from really from teenagers to women in their
Uh,
80s. I run a group program called Live Your Creative Genius, and I'm always delighted when one of the participants a couple of years ago was in her 80s, which made me very happy that, and she was delighted to be there. Here I am. I'm finally doing it. I'm finally giving myself what I need here. And but I'd say the average age is probably midlife. Women in their 40s, 50s, 60s. It's fairly typical for women to come to me saying, "I've done what the culture expected of me, and I am not satisfied. There's something in me that won't rest. There's some sense that I've been giving and giving to others and still haven't really been nourished myself. Help."
yes, that's very typical in a midlife woman, for
Yeah.
sure. So many women feel like that. They were raising their children, taking care of their spouse, their elderly parents, and when do I ever find time for myself? And at that point in midlife, you want to take time for yourself,
Yeah,
and you
or
speak up
yeah,
about it.
that's right. That's right. Or they've been
Yes,
building careers which they may be very successful on the outside, but something's key is missing.
yes,
And to me, I think we talk a lot about mind and body. The missing piece very often is our creative aliveness, is the vitality that comes from really tending ourselves creatively and finding where it is that our life force wants to go. Sometimes women come to me who are really exhausted because they've just been pushing down that life force
yeah,
to function in roles that they may not actually love, that may not feel authentic, that may not feel like who they're truly here to be. Often the people who come to me have done already a fair amount of work. They've already done therapy. They're on it in terms of caring for themselves in the ways that have become more out in the mainstream. Okay, I'm doing some therapy. I've started lifting weights or whatever it is, and something's missing. And I think if I put creative aliveness right up there with nutrition and sleep, it's that key to me to really be doing what our soul is calling us to do.
I believe that as well. So, as a Fulbright Fellow, Iowa Writers Workshop alum, teacher, and coach, what experiences most shaped your understanding of creativity and resilience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had some early success. I just followed my heart. I really have more or less followed my heart much of my life. I
Mhm.
turned down a job at McKinsey, management consulting, in my senior year of college. And then I was like, I want to sing and change the world. And I did a lot of activism and I was singing out as a singer-songwriter. And I began freelancing as a writer around issues that I cared about. And then I ended up publishing a memoir at 30. I was writing a different book. And then the editor at the house that I ended up publishing with said, why don't you put this into memoir? You've got some really interesting stories. And then after that book actually was published, I did this big national book tour. I decided I wanted to really dive fully into my creativity, and I applied for an MFA in fiction programs and got accepted to Iowa. If you get accepted to Iowa, you go. So I went to Iowa and emerged with my MFA, won a Fulbright to work on my novel in India. And on paper, everything looked fantastic. And then I went to India, went to Varanasi, and basically fell apart. Just stopped sleeping, had massive anxiety, terror, really. and was like, I don't know how to do that. And at that point, I'd already traveled a lot. I'd been to India, I'd been to Varanasi before. I'd spent months backpacking around the world and going to the middle of the Amazon or the mountains of Nepal and writing stories. So I was myself astonished, like shocked, really. But there had been some trauma, some of the impacts from immigration and some of the ways the family system adapted or maladapted to that I'd been sitting on for decades, really. And even though I'd already been doing work, I was already sitting meditation retreats. I was really forced to face myself and elements that had been in myself that I hadn't fully comprehended. I ended up leaving India, leaving the Fulbright, which was very hard to do because when you leave the Fulbright, you no longer have income or health insurance. So I came back to California with no money, certainly wasn't capable of working, and basically had to wend my way very slowly through a breakdown. And that experience changed me forever. And I think there were many things that were incredibly challenging about it. One of the things that was hardest was that I couldn't create. I've always been very creative. I've written since I was young. I'd been singing out and recording as a songwriter since I was about 20, and all of a sudden there was nothing. And all of my education hadn't prepared me for that. I'd learned to produce. If you're in a graduate program in writing, you're being workshopped. You have to produce a story every
Mhm.
whatever it is, couple months. And but I hadn't actually, I'd learned how to produce, I'd honed my skill as a writer, but I hadn't tapped into the true source of my vitality, which was why one of the things I was experiencing was a massive exhaustion. And that process over many months of essentially beginning to put myself together again, but in a completely new way, I emerged from that period profoundly transformed and having a very different understanding of creativity. I really had to figure my own way out of that hole. And what I began to understand was that creativity is not about pushing and production, which just didn't work in my case. It's really about learning to receive, about being deeply nourished, about allowing my vitality to arise, and then creating from that place, about the obstacle that I was facing ultimately being the path. My work really shifted. I came out of that experience. I began writing poetry. I published, I won a prize. I found my dream agent for my novel. Things actually shifted on the concrete level as well. But fundamentally, things had shifted in an internal way. And I took what I learned and began teaching a class at Stanford that was really focused on creativity and on process. And that just really, things really began to land and take off. And so that's where the body of work that I've developed since then began, where I began working one-on-one with people and then was being asked for Live Your Creative Genius, which was a group program that I developed. Women were saying this, I want more. This isn't,
Yeah.
and I want community. And so that's where the group program grew out of, was just the sense of we cannot do this alone. We don't function well when we're trying to do something alone. This is why I consistently women emerge from both my group programs and my work with me saying this has changed my life, because I think obviously there are the methods that I use, there's all of that, and there's the simple fact of accompaniment.
Yeah.
The wounds that shut us down, particularly around our creativity, which is on some level very much our life force, are usually very deep, they're very old, and they're relational. The parent who said, what? You can't just be who you want to be. You need to be a nice girl.
Yes.
You need to make that person happy. You need to succeed. You need to, whatever the thing was. And so for many of us, we shut this place in ourselves down very early. And so it's really about opening in a safe container to some of those places and being held in a relational field that is profoundly healing. I see this over and over. And once we can do that, and obviously given the right guidance, given the right practices, everything begins to shift. And what I've seen as well is that we don't necessarily know what we're capable of. Women often come to me thinking they want to do one thing, and sometimes that is the thing. But often, where we land in is actually bigger and more beautiful than what we could have envisioned when we were stuck. Because we simply have hit another paradigm. We're in a different place. So we're capable of, we're opened, we're changed. We're capable of accessing things and seeing things that we simply weren't capable of before. I'm thinking of one woman I worked with who, when she came to me, she was a doctor. She already had quite a measure of success, but she really wanted to change the culture around end of life care. She was practicing critical care and palliative care, and she'd been writing. She was a strong writer. She came to me, and I think maybe she'd published one piece in a medical publication at that point. We started working together. We really addressed some of the deep stuff around imposter syndrome. I'm a doctor, not a writer. I don't think I can do. Who am I to? And went into some of those deep old places. She's now a regular contributor to the New York Times. She published a book that got a lot of acclaim. She's gone on to make films. Her creativity just keeps unfolding, and this is just one story. She went to the Oscars. The film that she was in was nominated for an Oscar. It just goes
Oh
on and on,
my goodness. Yeah.
This is Dr. Jessica Zitter. She's one example of what can happen when we begin to truly give ourselves what we deserve and to truly to meet the one inside who knows who we truly are and knows what we're truly capable of. And that one might have been buried for a very long time. And if we are at all conscious, she isn't letting us go. I have a client who just emailed me this, that how she kept trying to run away and God wouldn't let her off the hook, is what she said. We can use different language for this, but so she had a whole successful other career.
Yeah.
And finally now, and she hasn't been happy for decades. And finally now, she's really stepping into herself as a writer. And so, to my mind, it doesn't matter when we do this. The person I'm thinking of is, she's in her 70s. She's retired from her other career. It matters that we do it. And when we do this, it's like a renaissance. Again, I see this over and over in my work. Women reclaiming who they truly are, finally taking a stand for themselves and their happiness and their gifts, and then coming into the fullness of what's possible in this life.
Must make you feel so rewarded, right? To see these transformations coming about. I wanted to ask you, when you were in that depression and
Yeah.
stuck, did you have help to
Yes.
get you? You did. Okay, because I was wondering if you did
Yeah,
the
no, I
work
did.
yourself.
I think that was part of what needed to heal in me, was this idea that you go it alone, you will your way
Yes.
through, which had worked until at 33 I had a breakdown and was so exhausted. It was like too much to get dressed practically. I had to. I worked, I had a good therapist. And I was still in the Dharma. I was still trying to meditate. And maybe 6 months into that, I came across the term dark night of the soul, which comes from St. John of the Cross, who was a Carmelite reformer, contemporary of and friend of St. Teresa. And without going fully into the story, he was imprisoned and brutally beaten for his attempts at reforming the order, and while in this tiny prison cell had this transformative experience and wrote a poem called La Noche Oscura del Alma, The Dark Night of the Soul, and later wrote a kind of a whole prose treatise around it. And essentially, when I came into contact with that, it offered me a reframe. This isn't just pathology. This is a spiritual opportunity,
Mhm.
basically, to ultimately open you to greater light. And that it rang true because I was having, like, I was in a very hard place. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And at the same time, it was like I'd entered a kind of a liminal realm. And I also started having some quite extraordinary mystical experiences. So I had a very deep sense that this isn't just, I had diagnoses. I had PTSD, I had generalized anxiety disorder with panic attacks. But some part of me knew this wasn't just about that. There was something deeper happening on a soul level. And I did emerge from that experience, and I've had subsequent nights as well. From each of them, I've emerged, I would say, in some significant way, transformed. So that's actually a theme that I teach on as well, is navigating the dark night of the soul and work with people also who are really moving through extraordinarily difficult experiences. Unfortunately, in the West, and this is very different actually from other cultures, like shamanic traditions, where an experience, the equivalent of the Dark Night, experience of breakdown, an experience that gets pathologized in the West, is seen in many cultures as actually evidence of this person's a healer. And this is their initiation. And I see these experiences ultimately as initiatory. So the depression, the flatness, the anxiety, the breakdown, that I just can't do this anymore. These are all, to my mind, on some level, our soul kind of knocking at the door. And if we haven't listened to it knocking, and this was my experience, and I am a hard nut to crack, it took a lot, you know? But if we haven't listened to it knocking, it's going to get really loud. And that's what happened with me. And that's what has happened with many of the people that I've seen in my teaching and also I also work as a life coach. So I work one-on-one with people sometimes going through these experiences. It's an opportunity, it's a tremendous opportunity for a total rewiring when we can hold it as such. That doesn't make it all beautiful and nice. It's still hard, these
Yeah.
experiences. But they have tremendous gifts if we can begin to open to those gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whether the obstacle is simply feeling like I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, I'm doing all the things and nothing's working, or oh my God, I am in hell. What the heck? What's going on? Where did my life go? This is another key to everything I teach. The obstacle is the path. It's always the path. It's always there to show us something. It doesn't necessarily come in pretty costumes, but when we can begin to, and for me, I needed help. I had, like I said, I had a good therapist. I had a couple of good mentors and teachers, and ultimately, out of my own experiences, developed the body of work around, I think in many ways, I developed the work that I do now around the things that I had to figure out on my own because I wasn't getting them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think that so many people are struggling to find peace?
Gosh, that's a big question. I want to sit with that for a moment because my mind is offering lots of responses. But I think that who we are on the deepest level is peace and freedom. It is love. It is joy. There are these different facets of our essential nature, and they are who we are. And in order to truly realize that, we need to reckon with everything that stands in their way. So these are the things that come up ultimately as signposts, really. When fear comes up, I see it as a sentinel at the gate of who we are becoming. When rage comes up, I see that also as a kind of a guardian of our genuine strength and power and our clean understanding of boundaries and needs. When grief comes up, these are these old places that feel abandoned or neglected or like we don't belong. And when we can truly open to that, it leads us into genuine belonging without any question and genuine worth. So on the deepest level, I think the struggle is here to wake us up.
Yeah.
I don't want to skip over, however, the part around the culture that we live in, which is inimical to life. It's like a buy this and buy more junk and you will be happy. You will have
Yes.
and this is destroying our planet. It's destroying us. And there's so many levels that I can speak to this on, and I know your listeners know what it's like
Yes.
out there, but so it makes it all the harder because we're constantly getting messages in this culture to just do these little surface fixes or buy more, just buy more, or have AI fix your problem, or whatever it is that are constantly leading us away, leading us outward from what's actually genuinely going to lead us to our true nature, which is, as I've said, peace. And that is by truly meeting ourselves, truly meeting these places inside ourselves
Yeah.
that feel abandoned, that feel angry, that feel terrified, whatever it might be, with very good company. This is not a journey we do on our own.
That was going to be my next question for anyone who's listening and they're thinking, how do I create a sense of sanctuary within myself when the external world is so chaotic? Can you do it on your own or do you need help?
I don't think it's impossible to do it on your own, but I think for 99.99% of us, we really need help. And that asking for help is itself a beginning of the healing.
Yeah.
Because we aren't we're animals at the most fundamental level, and we're not solo animals. We are tribe animals. We belong to each other. I think the book that I'm working on now, Sanctuary, is very much about the collective layers of the dark night. And one of the most important elements of our healing, I think, is really coming into this knowing in a deep way that we are not separate, that we do belong to each other, and that we take turns. Sometimes we're the ones tending the fire, and sometimes we're the ones that need tending to. Yeah, and it's just that's a healthy rhythm. That's a healthy society, a healthy culture. And so even if you can do it alone, I still don't think it's wise. For one thing, it's a lot quicker to be with others, to come into good company, whether that's my group program, Live Your Creative Genius, which is a very much about community holding us as well as guidance and creativity and meeting these places, et cetera, et cetera. Whether it's about finding a very good ally, a very good coach, this can happen in so many ways. But I do think having skilled guidance on this journey, I needed it. I needed it. And then I invented the pieces I didn't find myself.
Yeah.
We need it. We all need it.
I know you speak about collective crisis as a spiritual practice. Can you explain what that means?
Yes, what we're facing is unlike anything that we've faced in human history right now. And again, I don't feel like I need to cite statistics here, but we are more interconnected than we've ever been. And at the same time, we're facing existential threats that we've never seen before. And whether we want to talk about climate change or AI or oligarchy, there's many different ways we can look at it. We're facing some very huge things. And what I'm seeing in my work is that a lot of people are starting to break down and our systems are breaking down. The things that we've relied on, and in this country, democracy. Just okay, there's been issues, but it's basically been a healthy functioning democracy. Is that the case anymore? I don't know. There's certainly a lot of markers of fascism, and we'll see. We'll see. But so we're facing the breakdown of our systems, and for many of us, we are feeling challenged in ways that we haven't. And I do believe that there is ultimately no separation between what's happening on the collective and what happens. There is a separation in terms of what's experiential, but there's a deep connection between what we're facing individually and what we're facing, excuse me, collectively.
Yes.
And I see these times as a tremendous spiritual opportunity, ultimately, an opportunity for our collective upleveling and awakening. If we can use what we're seeing as fuel for our practice, if we work with it wisely, all the feelings that come up around, it's really hard tracking the news these days.
I try not to.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's wise to have to what's our, how do we to titrate? Like how do we figure out how okay, either for some of us that's like I just need to completely take a huge break for a very long time. For
Yeah.
others it's okay, how do we figure out how to stay in touch to some extent, but also really wisely tending to ourselves and to each other. And that's where I think again we get to these crises can wake us up to who we actually truly are, individually and together. And I'm thinking of Rebecca Solnit's book, A Paradise Built in Hell, where she actually looks at communities that were affected by major disasters, everything from the 1906 earthquake to Katrina to I think she has six, yeah, she examines six different examples of disaster and how in the wake of these crises where everything, literally things fell apart, there were no systems to tend to, people developed their own systems of care. And it's really interesting, felt more alive, felt more connected. This is what's possible. Now, I'm not saying we want everything to fall apart, but what I'm saying is that we have often forgotten in this culture who we really are and that we belong to each other in the ways that we do. And we're seeing this already. I'm thinking of there's a movement, singing resistance, that has sprung up in this country where hundreds of thousands of people are going to ICE headquarters or places where immigrants are getting picked up or whatever, and they're singing. And it's just the most beautiful thing. And it's the kind of action that really changes hearts. So we're seeing some
Yes.
very beautiful things already springing up in the collective. And ultimately, I do think we're entering a collective dark night of the soul, or maybe we're already deep in it, and that it has the potential to wake us up collectively in the way that possibly nothing in all of human history has.
Yeah. 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 I
This is
remind,
this is a time of miracles. It really is.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
When you were saying about people helping people, it reminded me when 9/11 happened, because
that's
I
it.
was in the city that morning.
Oh,
And
wow.
usually everyone is running and pushing and shoving and whatever. And that was the first time that I really saw collectively in Manhattan the acts of kindness, people helping other people that they didn't know. And I thought about it that moment. And I was like, wow, it takes a disaster for someone to be nice to somebody else. But yeah, so that brought that.
And I think this is what Rebecca Solnit writes about. What a disaster does is it strips away our masks and we can see
Yes.
who we really are. People are, I truly believe this, that there may be a lot of trauma covering it up, but people are fundamentally good. And we forget this because we're in this culture that's based on alienation and fragmentation. Survival of the fittest. You do it alone.
Yes.
One person wins and the others lose, etc., etc. But we forget who we are to each other. And so I don't think it's that. I think it's that what disaster does is it upends, it upheaves, upends things to such an extent that we forget our masks and we can be who we truly long to be. That's why in these studies, as Solnit writes, people actually feel, even though there's disaster and crisis, even though there's emergencies happening all around them, they feel more connected. They feel happier.
Yeah.
It speaks to the sickness of the collective culture. And I think it also speaks to the opportunity on offer here.
Yeah. For sure. What role does surrender play in navigating life's uncertainties?
Oh my goodness. What a wonderful question. It's huge. It's huge. I learned this in my first dark night because like I said, I'm a hard nut to crack. I fought and I fought, and I just kept trying to do it the old way, and I just kept collapsing into exhaustion again until finally, and again, I had some very powerful dreams. I had some very powerful openings where I began to understand that actually possibly something bigger was going on than I was thinking in during the most of the day in my kind of figuring out, planning, preparing mind. And I began to let go and surrender. And that's when things began to change. I want to be clear. So, surrender to my mind is huge, which is why I say probably many of the women listening are women who have pushed their way through, who have made things happen, who have achieved things, who have like pretty remarkable in terms of what they've accomplished with their will. But when it comes to genuine, deep change in our beings, both whether this is personal transformation and also really stepping into our creativity, our vitality, our life force, our genius, it's very much about surrender and receiving. This is, for many of us, this is a steep learning curve. But it's profoundly nourishing when we can begin to see that actually this is not about pushing, this is about letting go. It's about
Yeah.
letting our well get filled. It's about nourishing ourselves and surrendering. Surrender, I want to be clear, is not about not having agency. We tend to think, well, the tendency is it's control. I control things, I manage things, which is an illusion to begin with. And then you walk across the road and something, whatever, like along comes a bus or thing, we're not in control.
No.
But we do have agency. This is an important distinction, I think, that things happen to us. Did I choose to have a total breakdown? No. But at some point, I began to surrender and to understand that I had agency in terms of how I responded to it, that I could begin to allow it to teach me things that actually really fundamentally changed who I was and
Yeah.
changed what I was here to do and give and opened me profoundly. Surrender is huge. It's not capitulation. It's actually wisdom, the way I see it. And within surrender, we begin to discover genuine agency, which is not control, but is choice. And to my mind, we begin to become co-creators. This is key. We aren't doing it on our own. We begin to open to something deeper that's actually holding and carrying us. You can call this different things. You can call it God. You can call it spirit. You can call it source. You can call it the mystery, the muse. But there is something that we are, if we let it, in co-creation with around our lives. We see this anyway, I think, whether it's falling in love or synchronicity or just the way that the mystery shows up in our lives when we let it.
Yes.
So surrender is huge, and it's not capitulation. It's a choice. It's a choice to let go and tap into something deeper, our deeper nature, which is the things that I spoke to earlier, which is love and peace and joy and freedom. And to get there, we're going to need to face and to work with everything that stands in their way.
Yes. So many of my listeners are women and they're in midlife and beyonds, actually, probably in their 60s and 70s. And these women who are reinventing themselves, what
Yeah.
wisdom would you offer them?
Oh, I love that question. Get curious about what you really want and who you really are. And this can be as simple as a 5-minute morning practice of journaling. What wants to move through me today? And just write for 5 minutes. Free write. No judging, no trying to make it sound smart or good or pretty. Just discover what
Mm-hmm.
wants to move through you today. And to begin to get curious about who you actually are and what actually wants to happen. I believe our greatest genius and our authentic selves are not separate. The gifts that only we can bring. This is the mystery. It's like, it's completely distinct. Each human brings their own distinct gift, and we can't do it alone. So, whether it's live your creative genius, whether it's forming a little community, start with something as small as a 5-minute journaling practice. Get curious. There's something inside you that has been knocking. Your creativity is just your creative energy, your life force. It's up there with what you eat. So key. And be as real as possible. Take the leap. Say the thing that you've been wanting to say and you haven't dared. Go for the thing. If not now, when? Yeah, it's there. I offer a complimentary session for folks interested in working with me. This is not a sales call. This is
No, I was
a
going to
45
ask
minute.
you.
Yeah, it's actually, I am sincerely interested in what are you facing, and will draw on my 20 plus years of doing this work to really sit with you in your vision. What is it that's longing to be met and to manifest? And look honestly at what's been standing in the way. And based on what we discovered together, make strategic recommendations that are steps you can take today to
Yes.
begin to make that real, to make that vision real. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities here, but it starts with really meeting yourself where you are. And that can be 5 minutes of journaling in the morning. It can be
Right.
that simple.
So, for anyone who's listening, you mentioned a discovery call. Is that
Yeah.
available?
It is. Yeah. It's on my website. I can give it to you for your show notes as well.
Yes, please.
Yeah, gladly. Yeah, it's a gift, this session. That's always been the way I've run my business is I like to give, I like to overgive. For me, I do this work to change the world. I really do.
Yes.
And it's exactly what I said, it's give and take. I'm
Yes.
deeply fed by it. There's a one way in is I have a free creative archetypes quiz. It's about a 10-minute quiz. You can take it and see what your archetype is creatively. It actually gives pretty helpful insights and it can be surprising. This is how creatively I manifest in the world and how
This
to
is who I am.
this is I don't know if a quiz can fully answer that, but it can give you some clues.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. When is your book going to be published?
That's a great question. It's currently on submission. My agent has it on submission, so I don't have a pub date yet, but I'm about halfway through writing it,
Okay.
and it would likely, yeah, once we have a house, it's now 20, it'll likely be 2027. Yeah, I would imagine mid to late 2027.
And just give us an idea what your book is all about.
It's basically a spiritual companion through these times.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's about how can we really come use what's happening on the collective level as the spiritual opportunity it is to come into our genuine power, which is considerable. Most of us often unconsciously have been downplaying our power for our entire lives. The doctor that I spoke about is one example of someone
Hmm.
who, no, I'm not a real writer. I'm not a real, who's now a writer, a filmmaker, award-winning, an
Wow.
author. I mean, she has a whole world that she's created. Thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have been impacted by the work that she's doing. Lives have changed tremendously. This is what's possible for each of us. We have we have phenomenal power that we don't, gosh, that with our pleasing and succeeding and making nice, we tend to actually unconsciously tamp down. So
Yes.
sanctuary is really about actually stepping into that power and
Abs-
stepping into our freedom and stepping into our joy and changing ourselves as we change the world and vice versa. This is how it's going to happen. It's not going to happen by the policy change, that it's going to happen when we shift consciousness, as we shift. It's happening already. I see it happening
Yes.
already. And yeah, this book is a nudge of encouragement in that direction, or strong nudge, I would say. Yeah.
I'll definitely read it for sure. Marisa, I think this is a great way to end today. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you coming on. I love everything that you're doing, and I wish you the best of luck in the future.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's been a wonderful conversation, and
It,
thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for living your genius.
yes, thank you for saying that. Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this inspiring conversation with Marisa and that it reminded you that even in life's most challenging seasons, there is a sanctuary within you, a place of wisdom, a place of creativity, resilience, and peace that is always available. One of the biggest takeaways from today's conversation is creativity isn't reserved just for artists or writers. It is our birthright that we all share, whether through journaling, gardening, cooking, painting, movement, or simply approaching life with curiosity, creativity can with cur- whether you're journaling, gardening, cooking, painting, movement, or simply approaching life with curiosity, creativity can become a powerful pathway to healing, self discovery, and transformation. If you've been feeling overwhelmed, disconnected, or uncertain about your next chapter, I encourage you to take a few moments each day to reconnect with yourself, listen to your inner voice, and create space for what wants to emerge. Sometimes the greatest growth comes not from pushing harder, but from creating a sanctuary where we can truly hear ourselves. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who may need this message today. Your support helps us reach more women who are seeking greater health, vitality, purpose, and peace in their lives. To learn more about Marisa, her work, and her upcoming book, Sanctuary, be sure to check the links in the show notes. Until the next time, remember, healing is possible. Your creativity matters, and it's never too late to create a life that nourishes your mind, body, and soul. I'm Susan LoPresti, and this is the Susan LoPresti Wellness Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you next Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, for another inspiring conversation. Be well, be vibrant, and keep shining your light.